we have another question that is similarly related and a little bit more specific. And they say, when we are hurt by someone, it is easy to dwell on it and even gossip about it. How can we get over past hurts and move on without suppressing how we feel?
We witness this a lot from all of you, for someone may have said something or done something to you that was hurtful, in which you're in an engagement or a relationship or a conversation, and in that moment you receive it without perhaps retaliating or speaking your truth, but just receiving that information, and it comes in and it bombards your energetic field, and so it's just sitting there like a soup of heavy energy. And as it sits there, if you are not to address it but just allow it to sit there, it can get caught. We call these stuck emotions. And when an emotion gets trapped in your energetic field, it can result in an illness, it can result in pain, it can result in rage, it can result in all kinds of things. And so when you're in this situation, even if in that moment you're not ready to speak your truth to the individual in which you're having perhaps a conflict with, it is important that you share and you release your emotion around what occurred, whether it is with the person or it is not, in some shape, because if you don't, it just remains sitting and heavy in the field. When we look at you, as we've said before, we see you as these beautiful, magnificent balls of light. And you are so bright and so filled with love. And over time, we can see that the accumulation of emotional baggage, you might call it, or negativity in your thought patterns, or continuous willingness not to love yourself or to criticize yourself, creates these imbalances in your field. And when we see them, they look like little pebbles sometimes, or sometimes they're larger than that, or they're an entire boulder, and they start to accumulate and attract to themselves even any other energy that resonates with the same vibration of the pattern of an occurrence that happened. So perhaps, let's say you felt abandoned as a child and something happened where you were left, then you're holding a resonance of that abandoned frequency in your field. And anytime anything comes up, whether it's intentional or not, or a place in which you're feeling that same feeling of abandonment, it attracts into that little tiny pebble of that first abandonment more resonance of that frequency, and it begins to build on itself until it becomes a very large interference in your energetic field. And that interference then, when it becomes large enough and heavy enough and has not been disabled or released in a sense, can drop into and densify into what might be perceived in your understanding as illness. So it is important that when something comes up in that moment, rather than to brush it aside, is to address it. And often you do this in what you're calling gossiping. So someone comes to you, you have an event or an emotion, something happens and you're upset with it. And you don't address it with the person in that moment because you're overwhelmed with it. And then you sort of sit with it and you mull it over, and it goes around and around in your mind. And the more it goes around and around in your mind, the more it begins to solidify. And then you realize, well, you need to talk about it and get it out because you didn't get it out with the person, so you've got to share it. So you start to talk to other people about it, and you say, this person is this way, and this person is that way, and I'm so angry with this person. I can't believe that he did that. And then this morning, we were witnessing and watching Kelly, who we were speaking through, and she was in the bathroom, and she has an upset with a particular person in her family. And we hear her say, oh, that person, how dare they, or I can't stand them, or whatever it was that she was saying. We were not remembering, but it was something that she didn't even realize was coming up, that her mind was going around and around, and it was solidifying, and she was repeating about that person. She was even what you might call gossiping to herself. And so in doing that, it starts to build a momentum around that energy. And then yet you might say, well, is it best just to not talk about it, not to say anything, to just push it aside? And by pushing it down, it also solidifies it. So it's a fine line, and often many of you find it complicated. How do we address this? And so if in the moment when it comes up that you can witness it as it's not targeted directly at you, often what's happening in a relationship with another when you're feeling hurt is it's not really about you. It's their own energy that's being sent in your direction for them to release from their own field. And you can choose to receive that energy or not to receive that energy. And you're not always conscious. It can sometimes just come out of the sideways where you're not expecting it and you get slammed. And so you don't have all of your senses up to just be in the state of meditative way of observing and just allowing it to pass through you. However, that is the most ideal thing, to just watch it, see it, know it as energy, and that it's passing by, not to take it personally or to attach it to yourself, recognizing it is not you or necessarily even about you. There might be a nugget of information or something in there for you to reflect or to learn about, but the majority of the energy being bombarded at you is a release of their own energy to a place in which they feel safe to release it to. And so if you're not able to do that, then we ask you that when you come back and you start to realize how you're feeling in your body after that conversation or interaction, that you go into meditation and that you clear it with them on the spot right there as quickly as can. If you can't do it within a few hours, do it before you go to bed or the next day, or as soon as you have an awareness that that energy is mulling over, that you're talking about it, that you're stuck on it, that you're upset about it, and that it's being repeated and repetitive over and over. We want you to communicate with them. And if you can't communicate with them directly, face-to-face, we're wanting you to do it subconsciously. And when you do it from your subconscious or higher aspect of who it is that you are to the highest aspect of who it is that they are, the ability for it to shift is magnificent and beautiful. We love watching this because when we see you doing this, what we see is your bubble. And let's say your bubble is like a sphere. Sometimes when you're looking at it through a camera, you might see what you call orbs around you. And we see, in a sense, all of you as orbs. And your orbs are like these energies, and when they come together, they mesh, they meld, they become entangled. And you absorb a part of another orb's energy, and they absorb a part of yours. And it's like taking two pieces of Jell-O and putting them together, and they start to go into one another and create a whole, and they mix with each other, creating a new color. Well, you're interacting with others all the time. That orb of energy is receiving or absorbing that of another, and vice versa. And so if what you were absorbing was what you might label as negative or disruptive to the frequency or the vibration that you were holding that perhaps was at a higher frequency, and you dropped into resonance with their frequency, then you feel a disturbance in your, in your silly movies, it's called a disturbance in the field. And a disturbance in the field is when the vibration of something that's not in resonance with the higher vibration that you're holding has begun to infiltrate your sphere or orb, and it is affecting you, and it can create illness and all types of things, rage, upset, addiction, and so on. So if you can notice it when it's happening, we ask you to do this higher consciousness work. And when you do that, what we see is an extension of your sphere lifting up. So instead of it being like a round sphere, it begins to elongate, and you're moving up into the higher aspects of a frequency where you don't have personality, ego, identity, and self, and you're operating in a state of pure love. And from that place of that higher consciousness that you drop into through meditation into the higher aspect of who you are, once you are there, we ask you to invite the higher consciousness of the other person. to come in, and you will see them in the form with the eyes and the face and the body that you know them to have, but you're not talking to them in the flesh and the ego of the name of who they understand to be, but to the higher part of themselves that is still connected consciously to the body and understands the dynamics that are unfolding, but from a much higher perspective, without all the trauma and the ego and all the energies that are associated with what has occurred up to this moment in their life to be the being that they are, and the same for you. And as you go into higher consciousness and you invite them, there's different things that you can do. You can do what many of you are familiar with around Ho'oponopono, where you can send them love. But in this situation, what we are recommending is that you speak your truth about what just happened. And you speak to them about every single thing that you have to say that you feel completely and absolutely. And it's important that they're brought into a safe space. So you might be sitting together in a garden, and you might be on a stool, and the others across from you on a stool or a bench, or you might be sitting at the beach, or wherever it is that you choose to be, but a place in which you are feeling secure and safe. And you say to them, well, when it was that you said that to me, it really hurt me, and this hurt me, and that hurt me, and I feel really angry, and I feel that you don't care about me, and that you don't value me, and whatever it is, or that you don't see me, or that you don't hear me, or that I'm not important, and that you did this, and you did that, and you did this, and you did that, and you can say every single thing that you want to say to them from the beginning of time, of all the times in which they have hurt you in any way, whether that is aligned with absolute truth or not. It is your truth, and it is how you are feeling, and that vibration and frequency is in your field. And so you say it to them, and you say it to them, and you say it to them, and you say it to them, until you're so exhausted there's not a one word you can possibly think to say. And then you say, thank you for hearing me. And then you say, you look at them, and they receive it. And as they receive it, it's very important for you to know that you're not hurting them in any way. You're dealing with their higher consciousness, and they are just open to receiving that knowing that is your truth in that moment. And in that, you ask them then to leave. You say, thank you for listening, and I send you on your way with love and integrity. And you see them turn around and walk away. And in doing that, you're cutting the cords of the energetic energy that got caught in your sphere, that infiltrated and created disharmony or inside the vibrational frequencies of your sphere. And you might notice that the emotion then later that day comes up again, and that your mind's going around and around, and you're saying, I can't believe they said that, and do you believe this, and oh my goodness, why is that? And that means you have not completed it. And so then you have to do it again the next day, and the next day, and the next day, until you bring them into your awareness, and there is nothing there. It doesn't mean that you have enormous love and compassion for them, or that you see them in the highest and best, but it is that bringing their name and their energy into your field is no longer creating an emotion of any kind. It's neutralized. And when it's finally neutralized, you have released out of your field or sphere the resonance energy that you were holding, that was resonating with their energy, that was creating interference in your vibration and creating a belief system and an emotional charge that is no longer serving you. And so then, once that is complete, you just let it go and know that that is that. And then you might see them somewhere. Perhaps they're a family member, and you see them at a party, or they're a friend, and you'll notice that they treat you differently, or they're asking you questions they've never asked before, or they're connecting you in a new way, or they're being kinder to you. Or perhaps it's not that they're actually being any different, but that you're just receiving it differently, and it doesn't really matter what it is, but we can guarantee that there will be a shift in that relationship. And so this is a very important and valuable exercise, and it might seem in the moment as though it's simple, and what will it really do? Well, we invite you to do it and see what happens, because it's very powerful, and so it is.